Okay, few announcements. I think everybody here, almost everybody here's been here. The bathroom's way down the hall. You want to leave the door ajar when you leave. There's a thing for that. Both poets do have some books, if anyone wants to buy any books. They're just not out right now. And we will do a question and answer after the reading. Lee Wilkerson, who works in the library, played music for us last time and probably will again. One of these readings is taping this. So if there's anyone who you think, wow, they'd have really liked that reading, why didn't they come? You know, you can let them know, and Lee can give you the details about that.
Or if you're in the witness protection, stay out of the camera shot.
Yeah, right, for sure.
Did Lee tape the last time when he was singing? That was really great.
I did, yeah.
Oh, I loved it. I loved the man.
Oh, yeah.
Thank you.
Yeah, that was great.
Wasn't it? Yeah.
Yeah, Lee probably will be back playing some more by popular demand.
All right.
In terms of the local poetry scene, next month here will be Alice Persons and Jerry Terrio. Third Thursday of every month at Cafe Obscura. Dave, you want to say anything about that?
I think it's the 21st, Lewiston, Maine, Cafe Obscura. There's a wonderful it's a restaurant that has hosted us for the last, we're getting close to a year now, aren't we?
Yeah.
It's been,
And it's a really
going strong.
good group of people.
Yeah.
And we're reading Susan Pellantier's poems on this Thursday night. So yes, come and. Is it going to be regular open mic as well, or?
I don't
I
know.
think Dennis said he was, they were going to do part and part, but I'm not sure.
Part and part. Well.
Yeah, I don't think there's going to be that many of Susan's poems. So.
Well, Susan was a poet from Lewiston. You guys, I don't know if you knew her, but she passed away
Last year.
Yeah, last year. So we're going to honor Susan on Thursday, the 21st, and then there'll be an open mic afterwards. And that's been a really nice venue. And also in Auburn, the Wayne Library has invited me to do I'm working on a baseball book, so I have a theater piece that I'm going to present. So the ballpark contains the ball on October 18th.
All right.
Where's that going to be?
That's going to be at the library in Wayne.
Oh,
It's a Wednesday evening at 6:30, because we had that same conversation about when can you actually get people to come and listen to things.
Where is the Cafe Obscura?
It's on Lisbon Street, close to Main Street, next to Mother India in Lewiston.
Oh, okay.
Right down from the courthouse.
And that's a very energetic scene. It's a really fun venue for poetry. Okay, so today's reading's one I've been looking forward to for a long time. I'm sorry that we don't have more people to take advantage of our finally getting Megan and Michelle up here. The pandemic, of course, interfered with that. Our first reader is Megan Grumbling. She's the author of 2 poetry collections and a chapbook, and has been awarded a Ruth Lilly Fellowship. That's out of Chicago, right?
Yep, that's out of Chicago.
I asked you that because I was just visiting my daughter in Chicago, and her boyfriend said, you know, there's this place with this really nice courtyard. It's almost like it's got a Zen feeling to it. And so I said, yeah, let's check it out. And it turns out it's the Poetry Foundation headquarters. But we went on a Sunday, and there was like this huge rock where you'd walk in, so look closed. But that's quite an honor. also Robert Frost Foundation, and a Vassar Miller Prize. Megan also edits the Deep Water column in the Maine Sunday Telegram. That's through the Maine Publishers and Writers. It's a great opportunity for Maine poets, not just Maine poets, but I think especially for Maine poets. A lot of Maine, it's not just Maine poets, is it?
Maine poets and poets writing about me.
Oh, okay. So, well, it's a great, and you're still taking submissions, right? Or
Submissions are going to open again. Actually, they should be open very soon. So everybody should send some poems. I'd love to read them.
she is also reviews editor at Cafe Review. Steve Luttrell read here last time. I thought he'd show up now. And Megan teaches at UNE and SMCC and has co-directed a film. Do you want to say something about that?
Oh, yeah. I co-directed a documentary film, which just premiered up at the Maine International Film Festival. And it's a documentary about the high school that I and my co-director went to, which had a Native American mascot, which, as you know, has been becoming aware of the problematic nature of that. And so we followed a committee that the high school put together to decide what to do about this problematic mascot and how they had this really difficult conversation about sort of ingrained cultural narratives and identity and all that stuff. And, so yeah, that'll be screening around the state here and there this fall. And
What's it called?
oh yeah, what is it called? It's called We Are the Warriors. The Warriors is the name of the mascot. And Wells is the school that I was.
That's great.
Yeah.
All right. Megan Grumbling.
Thanks, Jay. It's fun to be up here, and thanks everybody for coming out on a beautiful day to hear some poetry. Let's see. My sister was in town last week, and she came into my kitchen and she sat down and she looked out the kitchen window and she said, "Remember the time that the neighbor's stairs got stolen?" And I said, "Yes, I do remember that. It was one of the highlights of that year. It was many years ago now, but I wrote a poem about it. What happened was there were stairs being built on the apartment building next door, and I was watching them become built step by step over the course of several weeks. Very slow going. Happened sort of in the evening. And then one day I came down in the morning and I made a cup of coffee and I looked out the window and the stairs were gone. They had been stolen. And of course I was exhilarated and wanted to know all about what had happened, and I found out. So this is called The Heist. Somebody's made off with the neighbor's stairs outside my kitchen window. Disappeared them sometime in the dark between my gin and bergamot. Beyond these same gold tongues of tulips on my sill, no one arrives at higher floors. Each door a stranded I, like the letter I. Each door a stranded I in clapboard rows. For fortnights over bread or figs, I'd watched the late shift men erect right-angled stringers, risers, treads, each one to bear a soul. Gazed on as they'd become themselves, the thing I know. But fast as thought, irrevocably, now the stairs are not there, are not anything. And all at once a whole array of structures is at risk of going. Bottom step and middle shelf, my scarlet wall between study and gulls, the brick that girds warm windows every dusk. A whole gestalt remains precarious, even once I've eavesdropped, heard the mystery revealed in other neighbors' midnight glee. There'd been a skinflint landlady, her funds withheld from surly builders, their revenge done after hours. And strange delight, relieved of certain certainties, I love these thieves. how they've not left a plank or screw of proof, how that dame's got to hire a whole new crew, and how this time, when I peer through the pane at stairs appearing, nothing will be safe from spiriting, the other side or this of tulips. All we've built by mind and fist is ravishingly stealable in weight of liberation. In these stairless days, bewitched and open-mouthed, I dream things gone by any slip or whim, and soon my own larcenous gaze conspires to lift this flight or that, street names, a certain phrase, to heist even the sterling surety of does or is, to leave those vowels vertiginous. I know it's a little bit early on a day like this to think about fall, but a friend of mine, and I kind of don't want to think about fall. It's really hard for me to let it go these warm days. But a friend of mine the other day, were commiserating about it's coming, and she said, but we can go to the sauna. We can go to the sauna and sweat everything out and get clean once it's cold out again. So this is a poem about a sauna and what it's like to remember how gunked up we can become inside with everything we sweat. And it's called Purge, in the Bethel sauna. Supine and stripped, we're bent in crooked thrall to yellow pine's rash, blaze, and roar. Sludge seeps from us logged beasts, our permeable faults, and pores engorged with gunk. And so Nance scrapes with wooden blades, confides how mortified she'd been in Turkish hammams with her mess of rampant nether hair, bowing to strikes from toothless matrons, dark pendulous breasts to waists, and how she oozed, and how it reeks, how vile, how badly you want to excuse yourself, because it's you fouling the steam, your grime they breathe. Such sublime abuse, the body's humbling, such relief. We well, knowing ourselves porous, absolvable. So I've been working occasionally with a composer who writes the music and I write the words, and we've written some things over the last couple years around some environmental themes, octopuses and landscapes and stuff like that. And our most recent collaboration is going to be about glaciers. And so I just finished writing this little libretto about glaciers, which was pretty fun because I got to learn some things about glaciers and just sort of feel like I was getting more intimate with glaciers. And I found myself learning about, how loud glaciers actually are, how active they are. They're moving all the time. They're making all these sounds as they calf things off them and crash things off them, and they're scraping the bottoms of things, and they're really this huge, resonating mass of ice. And so everything they touch, everything they carry is making them sound something, and how as they are melting more, they are becoming louder. So I just learned a bunch of cool things and just finished a couple weeks ago this little libretto, and I think it's going to be called Snow, Millennia, and Blue. And there's no music to it yet, so I'm not going to sing it. Don't worry. I'm just going to read it. So there's a few different sections of it, and the first one's called Blue. Hear how our blue was born. Snow fell, and snow fell, and snow fell. And ice pressed long and close. So close, so long, millennia, our crystals were transformed. And so there was a blue born in our ice. Essence blue, compass blue, pulse blue. And so there was a blue born in our ice. Snow, millennia, and blue, a blue that lights, that hallows, that holds, a vast and precious cold. 2. Oracle. Hear our story and oracle. Every season, snow falls and snow falls. Dust and pollen fly, elements entangle in the air, Arctic beings breathe and expire. Every season leaves a layer of what has passed. Snowfall and spore, fossil and ash, bubbles of atmosphere and breath. And so there are stories. Millennia of what is past, sun and storm, lava and smoke, flora and fern, shifting warmth and atmosphere held in our core. Snow, millennia and blue, story and oracle. Know our core and learn the gone. Know our core, foretell the world. 3. Moving. Hear how our blue is moving. Snow, millennia, and blue, and slowly we have grown our cold, our force, our forward urge. Snow, millennia, and blue, and so we are moving. We are moving across valleys and plains, flowing, crushing a river of cold, rinsing silt and glacial milk, slipping, cooling, quenching streams. And we are moving mountains, moving sand, carving lakes, scraping stone to till and trough, grinding peaks to gravel and silt, bearing boulders, eroding bedrock. And we are moving within, moving inside our ice, vibrating, reverberating, thrumming with the pulse of the gravel we drag, the rock we erode, the sand that scrapes, sounding tones with every stone we touch. 4. Going and ghost. Hear how our blue is going, how our blue is ghost. Whims and risks and reckless gases rise. Our sphere warms. So high, so warm, we pool, we pour, we rush. So high, so warm, we pool, we pour, we rush. And so there is our going, and so there is our ghost. Going, our blue is trickle, rivulet, deluge. Ghost, our blue is vapor, river, rain. Going and ghost, our blue is haunting the tides, swelling the seas, shifting the salt, veering our sphere, our pole, our spin. Snow, millennia, and blue, going and ghost, going and ghost. How we will well in your own sight. And louder. I'll do one more, louder. Hear how we are growing louder.
Excuse me, just gonna put this microphone.
Hear how we are growing louder as we go, as we ghost. Snow, millennia, and blue, going and ghost. We are melting, running, roaring, releasing our beads of ancient air, cracking, calving, crashing to the sea. Our sound is swelling, growing swollen. Going and ghost, we grow deafening. Going and ghost, we could rouse the gone. I haven't been writing a whole lot of poetry lately, but I've been working on these kind of prose poem things, and I thought I would read a couple of them. They're sort of loosely around the natural world and story, and kind of the idea maybe that some of it I think is around climate and changing climate, and when the climate is changing and becoming more erratic, how does our story change? How does our storytelling change? I think some of them are also about what can we learn about story or about telling from what we see in the natural world, what is being told already in the natural world. Is story an exclusively human thing? So I'll just read a couple of these. They're so new that I don't consider them done or anything. So you can tell me what you think afterward. Twig. Walking through the graveyard, I step past a twig that's fat and squiggly like a caterpillar, with a little wriggled ripple in its otherwise straight, static form. I just barely notice the twig, without breaking stride, but then feel a pang, some little thrum of tenderness, without quite knowing why. A step or two later, that pang or tender thrum sustains, is still vibrating inside me, like a tone struck on a small but resonant bell. So I turn back, kneel, and peer. Fat, squiggly caterpillar twig, nubby gray bark, and that wriggle in its middle, down, up, like a W. It's the wriggle that somehow is softening me and sounding through me. Each movement in the wriggle, I see, is something it once had to grow around, a stimulus or obstacle, when it was still part of a living tree. Each movement in the wriggle is something it lived through. My pang and tenderness surge, harmonize with what I can now name, my sudden understanding, my sudden fellow feeling, and even love, that this twig, like me, has a story. November swim. I thought I had jumped in for the last time, but in I plunge again, November 22nd. The ocean's colors are tinged with slate. The sun's angle is lower and the shadows longer, but the warmth in the air makes my mouth water once more for hibiscus and watermelon. The sun again, almost August on my skin. And so as I float in the November sea, I reawaken what I had tried to put to bed. My summer languor, miasma of Rosa rugosa, glorious dozing abandon, and lips parted to the sun. And yet, still, November. The milkweed gone, the carapaces gray, the monarchs flown, the gold turned to pale straw and sepia. And me, floating tropical hibiscus, lips trying to part. Tomorrow, should I expect a dying king and the last shriveled crops to glean, or a breezy, loose-limbed quest in green and chamomile? What season is this? What story? Bottles. What is the story? A myth? A season? A wriggle around an obstacle? Ursula Le Guin says that the story is not a spear, but a bag, a carrying vessel. Or maybe the story is a swallowing, or a swallow, a crow, a nightjar, a ball jar, a bottle. Or say we are all telling stories into bottles. Say the bottles are glass and lambent green. Each bottle will be filled with a message. For the rising sea, for a rescuer, for a castaway. The bottles may be filled with pleas, catharsis, cormorant feathers. The bottles may be filled with riddles, promises, plastic soldiers. And then, say someone receives the bottle and reads the message in time. Or someone receives the bottle but reads the message too late. Or someone receives the bottle in time but cannot read the message. Maybe they think the message mere gibberish, some lowly creature's tracks, a spore print, the cryptic residue of salt and ash. Or maybe they think the message mere fantasy. Someone fills a bottle. Who will drink? The raft is tethered and the bottles green. We send the bottles out, then pull them back. Swallowing. The story with feathers, buttercup love and tender rise of hill, that story has swallowed a bone, has swallowed a vertebra, the marrow and cross-section of someone's spinal column, or a blunt femur, or the splayed jaw of some creature burned or beached. The story with feathers palpates in alarm. Its feathers are breast feathers, ever so soft. It cannot expel the bone. The bone is now part of the story, anchoring it to the past or the future or the memory of a feast. Maybe the bone is anchoring the story to a murder or madness, a kingdom's collapse, a lover who stabs herself too soon before the boy has wakened from the drugs. Or maybe the bone is just plain old silver at the temples, chronic inflammation and bad hips, certain words disappearing forever down the well. The story with feathers and a bone makes a certain undeniable sense, actually. Soon it will be hard to believe the bone wasn't there all along. And one more, ripple. The story is, of course, expression, impression. That is, physical relationships, beings and forces changing each other, then moving on. Ripples and waves along the shoreline. A confluence of salt water and current, ochre sand and wind and afternoon light. Such fine synchrony, such fine, close lapping gills in the shallowest of these waves, riffling and sinuous, converging with and to other waves, their shadows on the sand limned and charcoaled in the gold. Expressed, impressed, ephemeral, in the gold. When the wave retreats, the sand retains the faintest ripples. Everything I have seen in the sand has been impressed by something that was just here, just moving, streaming, shining, blowing, foaming, flowing. Everything here, everything in this gold will soon be moved again. And I thought I would end with a poem from my book, Booker's Point, which is about an old Maine woodsman who I tend to think about, especially as we approach the shoulder season into autumn. And yeah, I spent a lot of time with Booker hearing his stories about the woods and the trees and how to do things right and all that kind of thing. Hearing his stories. So I think I'll read this poem called Some Kind of Hunter, which is kind of his retelling of a story, my retelling of a story that Booker once told me about kind of an uncommon communion he had with a hunter, an uncommon hunter, in fact. So, some kind of hunter. He coaxed a pregnant woman right across the river, and it weren't no easy bridge. A cousin of an in-law broke his dirt. She come up visiting from Vermont, too poor to buy a license. Booker paid it, set a rifle in her hands, and took her up to Perkinstown, the Brookside, where they come upon this bridge, just beams and cables, rough. Full 6 months big, a borrowed gun. To her, that span, it looked like one hell of a stunt. When Booker brought her up to it, said, "Look, you've got to cross that river on them wires." Now, Booker's gone these routes, matters of course, for quite a while, and spares no care or feet. Hauls moose out of the woods in split canoes, checks hoof prints in the gravel pit's pale sand most every morning, seeing where they cross. A deer makes no more noise than shadow does, he told his novice kin, and knows the sound by going over into silence, deep and back, more than a couple times. So when he led this woman, large with child, up to the bridge, and she replied, "Oh no, I can't do that," he tried to make her see the other side. "You gotta," Booker said, "or else what kind of hunter are you?" Well, that settled things. Their bridge stretched lean but held across the way. She took hold of the cables, hand to steel, and cradling that gun close, she went across. Thank you. And I'm really excited to hear Michelle read, so.
Take 5.
Stretch.
And Verse Daily. She's the author of a poetry collection, Leaves Surface Like Skin, and 2 chapbooks. Michelle teaches at USM and is the library director in Washington, Maine. There's more I could say. You could check out her website, Michelle Menting.
Thank you. Sometimes my voice does not project so well, or I don't project it so well. So
We can set you up with a mic.
no, this is good for me. But I mean, please let me know if you can't hear me. Although it is my responsibility to project my voice. So I'm going to read some poems that have not been read at readings before. They're very new, kind of a mix. Some have, and then there's a few thrown in here that are very, very fresh. So you're the first to hear them. I'm just gonna go right ahead and start. The first one is titled Real Estate. June sped by so fast. 2 weeks ago, when I looked out the back window, I saw a snapping turtle in my yard, scoping for a nest, sliding over grass to the driveway's sandy gravel, pushed by the winter's plow. But she took a turn, and by the time I had walked outside, she was ambling for the woods. It's nearly all woods surrounding our small house, up from the river down the hill. I wanted to move her, get her across our road and creekside. It's not busy, our road, dead end and dirt as it is, but our neighbor was selling his house, the last structure after ours, put it on the market that Friday, and car after truck after car mud-puddled through so fast, eager for acreage and the illusion of wilderness. I wanted to ensure the turtle, her eggs, all those hatchlings, made it safe and slow to the water's edge. But she was gone, lost in the woods or hidden beneath ditch lilies. She was gone. Her green shell camouflage when everything was camouflage, the entire ground colored turtle green. And by the end of that weekend, the neighbor's house was sold. I still don't know who will move in or what will happen to those wooded acres, that forest of wild illusion. I still don't know where that turtle went. I'm still searching for those remnants of June. Sorry, we do live on a dead-end road, and there's just one other house after ours, and he owned like 60 acres surrounding it, and so we're like, well, who's going to move in? Are they going to cut everything down? What's going to happen? We're like, oh, we don't have to wait or have to worry about it for a while because it just went on the market and it sold like that. I think by Monday went on. It was just, but I know that's probably pretty common now, but it's nutty. This next poem is probably my attempt at humor, which sometimes I try to be funny, and when I say that and I read the poem, it's like, that's not funny at all. But that's where I was coming from. And it's titled Shelf Life. Sometimes I open my kitchen cabinets and see all the processed goods, all the cheap dry goods, and I close the doors again in despair. Open them once more after imagining we're in some apocalypse. Some zombie apocalypse, how one can be linked to the other. And see again the exact same thing. All the processed edibles, all those bags of oatmeal, garbanzo beans, questionable nuts, variety of crackers. And then, you know what? And then I am lucky in that dead world. How I'd survive on all that ramen, that vegan pea jerky. You should come over. Oh, how we snack, oh, how we dine. We can imagine the dead outside with flashing red buttons, the kind they give the hungry patrons waiting for tables at restaurants with 1,000 beers on tap. And there we'd be, you and I, sitting at my kitchen table. It's not the greatest of kitchens, but here, have a cracker. I have so many crackers, bags of rice, granola bars, and all those hard raisins. There's no hostess, and heck yeah, we're already seated. And the zombies are zombies. They're staring blankly at their blinking red lights, holding them tightly, as if the pulses were heartbeats, as if they could cherish those ions of rhythm way back inside their hollowed out chests. See? See how lucky, so very lucky we all are? So I feel like I've said this so many times. I'm just coming down, feeling better from getting Lyme's disease again. And so ticks are just, well, kind of a part of our lives in this area anyway, but I just feel like every summer it's one of those things. So I wrote a tick poem. I actually wrote this a couple summers ago. And there's an epigraph, a little note at the top, and the title is Questing. And so the epigraph just explains what that is. When ticks quest, they crawl to the end of an exposed blade of grass or branch and extend their legs outward in the hopes that they can cling on to a passing host. I didn't know that was called questing. That's what that's called. It's true. I do want you to be a part of who you are, your parts to be my parts, all parts so whole. How lovely is that? We two become ecosystem of one. That's hot. Or what adventure. Oh yes, it's a quest after all. And either one of us can be hero. You can be my hero. Oh, sing it. Or mentor. All true adventures have one. You, oh wise two-legged guide, guide me. You, your parts become mine, then mine, so many of my baby mine. Oh baby, it's love after all. Love as connection, as journey. Such love, hot love, passion. It's all flow after all. Your flow, my flow, blood flow. Let me suck your sweet flow. Let's share. Let's vampire. But it's natural after all. It's nature, my nature, your nature, and the world outside with its roots and stems and trees. Steamy. Let me lift me up from this blade of grass, this branch wake of oak. I'll reach, I'll reach, I'll reach. I really hate them. But they're a part of our world. This next poem and the first poem I read were probably the freshest poems that I've written this summer, and our state poet laureate Julie Bausmont and Maine Writers and Publishers Alliance had this program where you could send poems to another poet that they fixed you up with, just epistolary poems, letter poems, and that's where these come from. We didn't necessarily write letters to one another, but we used each other's poems as prompts. And the first line of his poem is from that other poet's poem. But the title is When the Dew Point is High. July becomes a box of water, one made of cardboard that seeps inside out, outside in. If August is a Sunday of summer, July is Wednesday, middle child simmering. There is no Thursday, month summer. I forget the gods whose names we borrowed for time. I forget which people created them. But I know in summer I pine for waves, water over land impartial, rocks eroded to sandy tears, mud the mating of silt and clay, humus and orgy of oak and ash, buckthorn and maple, all dead or all resting. I'll float above them all, the plethora of textures, bottoming waters, those lakes and ponds, rivers and oceans holding us in, submerge and resurface. Maybe all gods are swimmers. So much closer are we to holiness when in the depths of the bodies we choose. This next poem I wrote a couple years ago, but it's been in my head for so long because of an image. I saw my sister do something, and it just at that time I didn't know you could do that. It was so cool. And I come from a family of 12 siblings, or 11, 12, and I'm the youngest. So everything that my older siblings do is always at one point it's cool because you learn from your siblings, I suppose. But anyway, so this is symbiosis. She made it look so easy, my sister, when she paused before the trail hollowed into hemlock and oak, when she dipped from her waist as if nothing but hinge of skin, and with fingers floating, grazing the patch of dandelions, she stroked the back of a bumblebee. We all doubt the real magic of this world. For so long I questioned the insistence of beauty in planted peonies, why so many maintain it's there. How some might see a flower so wondrous of pink and puce. Sometimes you see a word and you're like, how do you pronounce that? When you don't hear it, anyway. Or heart blossom red, and I'd repulse, reject those petals of tottering globes as full baubles of stick shaped like cheap popcorn balls my sisters and I made as kids, corn syrup glazing, baptizing our palms as we cupped and cupped, so desperate for sweetness. But now I see those peonies covered with ants and neighboring aphids, convening or broaching something others think baleful. An orgy of insects groping slick nectar so eagerly they'd think, how unseemly. But don't you see the mirror? Let's reconcile this religion of flowers. Believe me, this too is a psalm. To fingertip the felt of an insect pollinating a weed is to praise and partner in all the green wonder that we are. And this next one is just called Partisan. Fervent beast of chiding, that chipmunk will stare and stare until the house cat lifts her tidy paw and waits for it. That single chirp, like a schnauzer's bark, clipped, a snap really, and then her calico claw smacks the glass, the barrier that was there all the time, that both knew was there all the time, and they just keep the rhythm going, how it circles and cycles, the stare and pause, soft threat, triggers, concrete abstract, and issues, same, and the noise, the persistent noise of it all. It's a short poem that I titled in so many different ways, and then I came up with Partisan, and then it eventually got published, I think, because of the title. This is Storm in a Sunburst Hour. It comes right before you tie on your shoes, after you opened all the windows, all of them, and the cats giddy themselves to the sills, to bird spy, to sun stretch. The whole of the morning grows to a dew-point tit, but bright, cloudless. No glove of vapor grips the horizon, no storm in sight. Still you feel it, you do. The moment you dress and ready to venture outside, to do the day as you do. But the joy in pretending, oh how unexpected this downpour drench, a delirium farce, you're 10 again. How freeing to step barefoot on sopped sheet moss, to dance the day anew. This next one is in several sections, but they're very short. It's titled Of Precipice. 1. The bobbled squawk of turkeys, juveniles full of pomp and bop, unsure why they do what they do, like teenagers grappling for stature. 2. We'd pounce, pop up, then left, miss the volleyball, dented and dribbling off the dock as it bounced into the water. And we'd dive, 7 slip-skinned siblings, into the lake. Its body all crests, lip then dip, lip then dip. 3. That fox, puffed fur and full red, pranced charming. A stuffed toy come alive on whispering paws, tail tip straight, tail tip low, neighbor's hen limp in his mouth. 4. bramble ditch of raspberries growing along our road years ago. My sisters and I sprouting stigmata like blossoms from pricks of thorns, all of us picking, filling colanders with baubles seeping red. 5. The last cut of devil's food cake, layered to a decadent notch, but dry, crumbling. Chocolate icing black as death. 6. Mason jars simmering, the ones our mother sets in the pot, readying for raspberry jam. Me, small wiry child, learning, but too slowly, moving too quickly. By my teenage years, our mother will be gone. 7. Skis above snow, above ice, above dormant lake that waits for waves. 8. Breath stuck in a thick of June humidity, siblings at a funeral, a density of sisters, all words choked in the throat, swallowed, heat sealed, their hearts like baubles seeping red. And I just have one more. I write a lot of poems, many poems, having to do with my mother because I think of her all the time, and she just had left such an impression on me. She was my only parent after my father died when I was like 4 or something like that. So she was kind of like that figure. So this one is kind of dedicated to her, as was the last one, and it's titled Breathing Room. My mother was buoyant. In water she was afloat supreme, held no shame in the folds of her body. She let me climb atop her one piece, the suit with straps that would slip off her shoulders. Sorry, let me review that. She let me climb atop her one piece, the suit with straps that would slip off her shoulders ashore. But in the depths of lakes, they'd rise, U-shaped twin halos, paralleling her neck. This was but one part of her holiness. Just beneath her collarbone, right above her breasts, I'd hug, careful, and only after ample practice to leave space between my arms, her soft skin. Breathing room. And we'd dive, we'd submarine. With smooth winged moves, we'd wave beneath the surface. Below, minnows, pondweed, wild celery, the one bass nest. She'd point out the bladderwort, and I'd hold it in no longer. I'd break our stream of gloss with bubbles of underwater snickering. Remembering the names of plants and fish was for the surface. Once, on the lake's horizon, we'd dip below again, sink in the fluid silence. Submerged, our bodies turn vessel of one on a single gulp of air. Thank you.
Thanks, Michelle. So, put a couple of chairs for you guys, if anybody has any questions.
Do either or both of you incentivize yourself to help you sit down and actually write?
That's a great question. Sometimes I take poems to the beach with a clipboard and a sandwich, and I'll be like, I can only eat the sandwich after I've written a little bit. So I guess that's a yes. I don't know if I do so much, but I've been writing poems on my phone. Because usually when I think of something, I'm usually moving or walking, and so I try to finish a thought before I finish my walk, I suppose.
Yeah.
But, yeah.
Thank you.
I was struck that you both were writing about swimming and being in the water.
Mm.
Just seemed like an important part of your lives.
Yeah, I have a lot of childhood memories of. I grew up near a pond as well, so spent a lot of time in the water for sure.
Yeah.
I love that line in I can't remember the name of the poem, but like maybe all gods are swimmers.
Oh,
Something
sure.
I loved so much of that poem, but that line really struck me.
Yeah, we grew up near a lake. We call them lakes. Like, I know you all call them ponds. That was something that always kind of struck me when I came out to Maine. Was what I would call a lake is called a pond. I'm sure. I mean, there's obvious science behind it, but I'm from northern Wisconsin, up in Michigan originally, that kind of area, and there's many lakes, and we're like we're under an hour from Lake Superior, and it was such a big part of our life growing up, and such a big deal to take the 45-minute drive up to Lake Superior a couple times a summer and swim. So it's definitely a big part.
I love that you both told us information that added so much for me to what you were writing. It just made everything sing for me.
I love how cheerful and agreeable your tick was. You know, good question. That's very good. And I noticed both of you are really invested in nature so much. So how, I like the way you're speaking for the tick, but how do we speak for nature in these troubled times? Is it important to you?
Yeah, I try to exercise restraint. I write very angry things usually, but that doesn't go over so well. I did bring some angry ones, but I didn't want to read those. It's I don't know. When I write something, and even if I'm angry about the situation, when I start to have a better hold of how it works and how it functions, like ticks, and you know, they're a part of our ecosystem. Something eats them. I mean, they're necessary. I guess that's where I try to have a poem bring some sort of element of joy, so we can see that with, this is so cliche, with the bad comes the good, and just understanding. I don't know, I think you can probably answer this better.
How do we speak for nature? I mean, really carefully, I guess.
Yeah.
I think it's a pretty hazardous proposition, but I think we kind of have to in a way, because how we're so calibrated, how we as people are calibrated to understand anything or care about anything is through story. And so, yeah, I mean, I think it is a really good question we should keep asking ourselves, is how do we speak for nature? And we can't ever fully, but, you know, I mean, we've been doing it forever. We have all these gods that are based on elements of nature, right? And so, like, I think, like, reevaluating how we've done it in the past and how we do it now, and keep shifting it.
Yeah. I like the direction you took with the twig, you know,
Yeah.
and then that series of poems after that. Or was that one continuous poem?
No, those were separate things,
They were-
yeah. But like part of a kind
Kind of
of
a
series
theme,
of things I'm
yeah.
thinking about. Yeah.
Yeah.
Thank you.
How long have you been writing?
Sorry.
How long have each of you been writing? Forever?
Yeah, since I was a little kid, I guess. My mom would help me. She would like transcribe my stories about fairies living in acorn and milkweed pods or whatever, and yeah.
Yeah, I used to just, again, I always tried to be funny. I like to write letters and notes to my friends, and that was the type of writing I like to do. I think I wanted to be a humorist. I don't know, and then I just never, I mean, I'm very shy, so it's hard to have that come through, but I didn't really come to poetry until later. I just started with writing short stories and fiction, and then nonfiction, and then had a really great instructor, and I was like, you can do that in poetry. I didn't know that, and so I started to write poems.
I'm curious about your reading habits and how, not just reading, but hearing, and like, how do you take in poetry And how do you, like, obviously you have to listen to other people in order to know what you're doing, but like, how do you take in poetry, and who have you learned from?
Let's see. Do you want to take that first?
I think that my reading habits have changed over time. I mean, I think when I was initially introduced to poetry, it was a professor having a class and saying, okay, read these 6 collections, each one by a single poet over
Yeah.
a semester of time. And then, but I mean, honestly now I know about poems and poets when other poets might share them on social media, or I'll see an online publication, and because it's more readily available, I'll read individual poems rather than entire books by one poet at a time. But I like that because then I get a sense of different styles and voices and introduced to new writers. As far as who taught me, I don't know. I feel like I just learn from every poet I'm exposed to.
That's great. That's
Yeah,
great. That's great.
Yeah, I think I feel the same way. I didn't study poetry formally in college or grad school, so it's mostly from like hearing and reading and sort of reacting to what I read and hear. And in terms of how I read now, I guess it is sort of piecemeal, like Michelle was saying. Like I think what friends pass along to me, or what I see in a journal, or something I mean, sometimes I'll sit down with a volume that I know I love and I need to sort of refill me for some reason.
Yeah.
And I certainly have some old faves and poets who are really influential to me. Wendell Berry is one. Barry Snyder, some Wordsworth. I just was teaching Wordsworth with some students the other day, and I sort of was weaned on that because my dad was a Wordsworth guy. And so, I think it's great for me to return, probably all of us, to return to the poems that have helped shape us in some way.
One of my mentors is Ted Creuser, who writes these tight little poems that are mostly observations. And I love Ted Creuser poems. I love what he does. And when I took a class with him, I wrote the worst poems. They were just horrible. And I still try to do that. And because I can't do it. And I think but he's marvelous, and I think I learned a lot from him, but I think more so in terms of how to write in other genres, just because I don't think sometimes what works for others doesn't work for you, or I just can't write like he can, but I still think he greatly influenced me, even though my writing doesn't, I don't think, demonstrate his aesthetic.
I totally agree. I think I learn from people that I can't do what they do too. And there's a kind of like cross-training aspect to it, like I'm not going to do that, but something about that can inform something I do in another way.
Yeah.
So I hear what you're saying, totally. Yeah.
Megan, you said you've been writing librettos, collaborating with a musician, and you mentioned the one you read, you said music hasn't been written yet. Is that the usual process? Like, do the words come first, or is there no set?
In general, you mean?
Yeah.
I think it happens in different ways. I don't really know how everybody does it. I think it's often that the words come first.
Yeah, I mean for
me, the words have always come first. Yeah, I've always been interested in trying it the other way because I think that would be such an interesting challenge.
To write from the music.
To hear
the
music.
song, to hear the instrumental, and then write back to it.
I worked for a long time. I worked with another composer before he passed away, and at one point we were talking about trying that. I'm curious how that would have gone. Could have been some static there, actually. but I love the idea of it. Yeah.
Do you ever hear a tune, whether it's instrumental or has words, but you're focused on the tune and the melody, and then try to write a poem that feels like that?
I've never tried to do that. Sometimes I'll hear, like lately, sometimes I hear kind of a melody in my head.
Yeah.
And I'll think of, and like then the words will come to that.
Yeah.
So that's different and interesting. Like that's pretty different for me.
Yeah.
but I don't think I'll ever be composing symphonies or operas or anything as a musician, as a composer.
Oh, so you do music as well?
No, I don't. That's what I'm saying. I don't. I can hear it well, but
Right.
I'm not a musician. So.
Both of you are very musical, and your voices themselves are quite
Oh, thank you.
lovely. Yeah.
I might actually use some of your poems to try to, in Booker's Point.
Oh,
Yeah, kind of bring in that certain cadence and taught a couple of poems as well.
that's cool. Thanks.
Because it's very noticeable and wonderfully.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Well, Booker gave me so much of that. Like he had the cadence. I didn't have the cadence. He just talked, and I was like, okay, inspiring.
I'm curious about structure. When you read, it just kind of flows, and I don't hear structure. But then I've been discovering quite often you do have some structure. So how does it work for you?
I think it depends on the poem for me. Like that Booker poem you heard at the end, that's all pretty structured. Like iambic pentameter, and some of it is rhyming and stuff, actually. But the prose poems, sort of, the structure comes from the thinking, I think. It's like a meditation, or I'm trying to work something out, or I'm imagining something and like the logical extreme of something. So I think it varies for me how the structure comes into play.
Yeah, I mean, I try to include formal elements in my very much reversed poems by way of sound and cadence. I think of poems being obviously taken in different ways as far as I like how it looks visually on the page, and if you just read a line and you look at where the line breaks and the meaning that is just contained in that particular line, and then when you read the next line there is that added meaning or a surprise, or just the whole element of how when you read from line to line, how that, I guess in a sense, kind of structure can make the poem change. But when I'm reading to a group, I think it varies. I think it's just the idea of reading it that might be in a way that might be best received, and especially if it's if I'm being kind of silly and it has kind of a silly nature to the poem, then take it on a more conversational, fluid way of reading it, I suppose, which may seem like it doesn't have structure at all.
Lovely what you do.
So, what's the future of poetry going to be?
A collaboration with AI? Certainly hope not. I'm not signing that book.
Yeah, no.
You probably all heard that like,
Thank
there's
you.
a collaboration between the AI, or maybe just the AI wrote it and somebody edited like the best of the AI's poems. I'm just
Haven't heard it,
not
but
interested
I'm
in
not
that.
surprised that somebody's already done it. But, for me, my opinion of that is that I want to hear the human being, with all their flaws and quirks and their strange and different points of view, whatever it is. I honestly never want to have more of a relationship with a machine than I do with my car. It's like, hey, it gets me to point A to B. I know in America we love cars, but my personal opinion is I don't love them.
Yeah.
I would love to have a better relationship with the people behind the wheel.
Yeah.
And instead of the road rage and the isolation and all of us in our own little cubicle. And I think poetry and poets are almost the last bastion of that in many ways.
Yeah.
There's just so much noise that if I would be deeply disappointed if I found someone was doing their poems with AI. However impressive they may fool us into thinking they are, I would be deeply disappointed in the person.
Yeah. Or however impressive the conceptual whatever behind it. I just
And who learned that? I mean, if a machine did it and they're smarter than me, well, great, it's a smart machine. But I don't know that I have become more enlightened, or that the poet who then professes that that was their creation. That are they more enlightened, or are they just a mimic of a machine now?
Well, it becomes a simulacrum.
Yeah,
right?
it's like
because the AI is using everything that's out there on the
Sure.
internet, and then once that's what's on the internet.
yeah, and they
You know what I
and we
mean?
already know it. We were talking about that before. You know,
Yeah.
it regurgitates to us and advertises us what we
Yeah.
think we want. You know, and
Yeah.
it just, you know, what a terrible trap that you would only hear what you presently agree or like, you know, that you wouldn't hear something new. You know, honestly, I wish you'd have read some of your angry poems in with your nice ones, you know.
Encore.
You know. So if you want to take another shot at it, I'm open for it, you know. I'll buy the first beer. You know. That's how I am with poets. It's like, hey, if you'll tell it, I'll buy the first beer. You know, if you'll tell the thing you were afraid to tell, you know.
That's a nice way to put it.
And a machine doesn't have any of those issues, you know what I mean?
Right.
I don't know if a machine can be afraid, but a poet can be afraid of saying what they really feel.
Mm-hmm.
But I love it when I hear them say it.
Yeah.
Mark, I want to add on to that, and I think I'm adding on, who knows?
Go ahead, feel free.
Thank you for the permission.
Add away.
Yeah, I read for voice, and I would feel really violated if I found out that the voice was the voice of a machine.
Yeah. Yeah.
So that I'm not ready for that.
Yeah. It's like a person who name drops or, you know, concept drops, and you think, well,
Yeah.
and you get really interested, and you ask them, well, I didn't really know anything about that. I just grabbed that and threw that line in there from the Greeks, you know, and it sounds like I'm an intellectual, you know. And, you know, really, I don't know anything about it, you know. It's like, okay, well, I thought I had something going here, you know, that I could learn from you. You're a copycat, you know.
Yeah. Fall of Rome, that's what I keep saying.
What's that?
Fall of Rome, when I think about the
Yeah,
AI.
yeah.
But I've been
Yeah.
saying that for a
Yeah.
long time.
But it took a long time.
You're in,
for
you're in
Rome to
journalism,
fall.
right?
Yeah.
Not really anymore, but
Oh, okay.
once I sort of was, but not so much anymore.
Oh, you got me worried here.
I got him
How
worried.
long did it take for the Roman Empire to fall? Well, your comment, right, that it feels like we're coming into like this, you know, terrible time, and, you know, we're worried about, you know, the machines are gonna beat us all at soccer and play, you know, take over our jobs as poets, and, you know, I mean, it's not a good feeling. But my only comment was that I remember the Roman Empire, you know, it took a long time to
Right.
die. So are we in this period where, or maybe we're at the end of the American
My
Empire?
understanding was that it went very slowly and then ended quickly. If that makes any sense.
We're kind of getting off this.
Oh, sorry.
You're both teachers of some young people, and what are you finding? Is there a lot of interest in where you are in poetry, and are you getting a lot of good writing?
Yeah, I mean, I think students always kind of want to be able to express themselves and are interested in finding ways to do it in a playful way. I always try to make class about play, you know, and let's try this and let's do this weird exercise. Like we did postcard poems the other day and paint chip poems, and I think they always will want to have somebody help them or force them in some fun way to say what they're feeling, and they might resist it at first, or they might resist the form at first, but I think there's always going to be that desire and need, I think, so.
Yeah, I mean, I'm not teaching this current semester, so it's a little fuzzy, but there's just so many amazing viewpoints and ways of looking at things, and amazing poets. And I found that when a lot of my students enter the poetry class, they have this sort of, you know, assumption about poetry, and the ones that are like, I'm not so sure about this, because when they think it's just anything goes, it's completely freedom, and that sounds like a good thing, but when we tell them, well, no, there are certain parameters, or you can use these certain structures and confines, and then they find like that bit of challenge just makes actually more free in their thoughts and ideas, and the challenge is how do they structure on the page, what elements of the technical virtuosity, the elements of poetry can they, I mean, that's where they kind of limit themselves, but then the ideas and the images are completely free for them to select and use, and I think that kind of, that sort of balance.
What ages do y'all teach?
College level.
That's young people for me, you understand.
Sure, absolutely.
And me.
And where do y'all teach at?
I'm at SMCC in UNE,
Okay.
in the Biddeford campus.
Yeah.
University of Southern Maine.
Oh, okay. Yeah.
Okay.
Well, that was good.
Thank you
guys.
very
Thank
much.
you.
And remember, there are some books in the house.